The number one thing you can do off the mat to improve your performance on the mat is going to be to get stronger. No one ever lost a match because they were too strong, and no one ever got injured because they were too strong. But how strong do you actually need to be for jiu-jitsu? In this podcast, I'm breaking down the strength standards that every serious grappler should aim for, how to identify weak points, and how to fix them. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Settlage Strength Podcast. I'm stoked to be hanging out with you guys today because we're really just talking about how strong do you need to be as a grappling athlete. And before we dive into the specific exercises that you can use to assess your strength and how to identify weaknesses, how to improve on those things, it's important to remember that strength really is the foundation of athletic performance. As you get stronger as an athlete in whatever sport that you do, whether that's jiu-jitsu, wrestling, MMA, even something that's not combat sport related, basketball, track and field, as strength improves, so does the potential for you to improve in all other athletic qualities. So if you're an endurance athlete, as you get stronger, your endurance or your potential to be a better endurance athlete is going to improve. If you are a field athlete, you play football, soccer, lacrosse, any of those things, as you get stronger, your potential to perform at your best is going to improve as you get stronger. In combat sports, the crazy thing about getting stronger in combat sports is that as you become stronger in combat sports, not only are you more effective and more dangerous, whether you're striking, grappling, or mixing the two together in MMA, but you're also much more resilient to the stressors of combat sports. And that's what makes strength training and just the pursuit of getting stronger so important, because there is really nothing else that you can do off the mat that's going to improve your performance on the mat in the way that getting stronger is going to improve your performance on the mat. I firmly believe that getting stronger is the number one thing you can do when you're not doing jiu-jitsu, when you're not wrestling, when you're not training MMA. If you're going to dedicate your time to anything, you have your skills training, you have your sparring, you have your recovery, and you have a little bit of room left over in your training week to do something else. Yes, you could do some mobility training. Yes, you could do some flexibility training. Yes, you can do more conditioning. However, the athletes that focus on all of those other things but lack strength, by and large, never perform as well as the athletes that take that extra time to focus on getting stronger. And if you structure your strength training the right way, you're also going to improve your mobility. If you structure your strength training the right way, you're also going to improve your conditioning a little bit. You can mix in strength and conditioning together, which we may just do a whole episode on that later on in the future, but that's not the goal for today's episode. In today's episode, we're talking about how strong do you need to be as a grappling athlete. So we've talked about why strength is so important. It's going to help you apply more force into all of your techniques. Getting stronger doesn't ruin your technique. Getting stronger doesn't negatively impact your jiu-jitsu training. It just enhances whatever quality of technique you already possess. So if you do a really sloppy armbar and you get stronger, you're just going to still do that sloppy armbar, but you can apply more force into that sloppy armbar. If you have good armbar breaking mechanics, if you have good setups and control and finishing rear naked chokes and things like that, as you get stronger, you're just going to be able to apply more force into the quality of the technique you already have. Getting stronger is also going to make you way more durable and less likely to get injured. Remember, no one ever got injured because they were too strong. The only reason why people get injured is because they're not strong enough to withstand the forces that are being applied to them. And there is a limit. Like as much as I'd love to say like we can all be built like vulture mites and get, hit head on in a car crash and walk away totally fine. We are human beings. We are made of flesh and blood. So we're going to have some limitations in how strong we can get. We're going to have some limitations on the total amount of force that we can withstand. However, the stronger you are, the less likely you are to get injured simply because you're just more durable. When it comes to building strength for jiu-jitsu, there isn't really a ceiling of strength. Like there's never going to be a point as a grappling athlete where you're like, okay, I reached that limit. I am I've like maxed out my strength points in this video game, and no, I'm never going to work on strength again because I've already hit all of my XP in strength. There may be certain exercises where you do kind of reach that limit where, hey, I weigh 200 pounds. I came from a powerlifting background. I can squat 600 pounds. For a jiu-jitsu athlete, trying to go from a 600-pound squat to a 625-pound squat, the amount of work that goes into that may not be the most efficient use of their time, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't work on strength. And that's something we're going to talk about a little bit in this episode when we go over these standards. We're always looking for new ways. We're always looking for better ways to get stronger. We don't want to have any weaknesses. And it's kind of this moving target that we're always going to be chasing. So just keep that in mind. I want to set the expectations early that there's never really a point where you hit your ceiling of strength and you just need to stop strength training. However, there may be certain areas of strength or maybe specific exercises where you get so strong in those exercises, pursuing more strength in those things may not be the best use of your time. So when it comes to grappling strength and the strength that's required for grappling sports, there are a couple different kinds of strength. You have to have the strength to not only apply force, so it doesn't really matter how you're doing that, you just got to apply force into your opponent. That could be pushing them, that can be pulling them, that can be like running through them on a takedown. You're applying force into your opponent. Now, there's also types of strength that you need in grappling sports where you're moving your own body weight. You need to pull your knees to your chest. You need to spin upside down. You need to extend up and arch your back in a specific way. You need to have great control over your body. So in how we assess how strong you need to be for jiu-jitsu, on one hand, we're going to assess body weight strength. So how strong can you be with your own body weight? How well can you control and move your own body weight? But then on the other hand, we also need to test, okay, how much just like raw strength and raw force production does someone have? And an easy way to test that is with different exercises where you just add more and more weight on the bar. It's kind of a proxy measurement on how well you can produce force. So we do want to tackle both sides. If you're an athlete and you're super, super strong in the barbell lifts that we're going to talk about later in this episode, but you're very weak in the body weight strength exercises, that's a problem. If you're someone who's maybe a smaller, lighter athlete and you can do pull-ups, dips for days, yet your barbell strength is pretty weak, that's also going to be a problem. We want to make sure that we kind of find this good balance between all of these different strength standards, so that way we don't have any gaping holes in our athleticism. For me, when I first got into combat sports, I was already doing some martial arts, and we did a ton of calisthenics. We did a ton of push-ups, lunges, burpees, all that stuff, and I kind of carried that into wrestling. I was really good at pull-ups. I was really good at handstand walks, handstand push-ups, dips, all of those things. But I wasn't very barbell strong. Like I'd get, completely folded under a 135-pound squat. I'd get completely folded under, 135-pound bench press. And I needed to just build up some of my just total strength in some of these barbell lifts. I'm not saying that these barbell lifts are the best exercises ever, because I don't think that all of these exercises like squat, bench, deadlift are going to be most appropriate for every grappler, but they can be tools that we use in our arsenal to test strength. And so for me, I kind of came into the later years of my wrestling career with a ton of body weight strength, not a ton of just straight up barbell strength. And now that I'm doing jiu-jitsu, I do tend to see kind of both ends of that spectrum. I do meet guys that are brand new to jiu-jitsu and maybe they came from a powerlifting background. They can deadlift a house. They can squat a house. Their bench press is pretty ridiculous. Yet their body weight strength is lacking. They really struggle on pull-ups, chin-ups, dips, and they're not anywhere close to getting a full Nordic curl. When that happens, we got to make sure we implement different strategies into their training, so that way there's a good balance of both. You got the body weight strength, the strength to control and move your own body, as well as the strength to apply tons and tons of force into your opponent and into the environment around you. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start with the body weight strength standards. There's so many different ways you can assess strength and kind of build these standards around like, okay, how strong is strong enough? What's a good minimum? What's a good, base of strength? The way I look at it is I want to test strength in a lot of these main movement patterns. When I think it was episode 2, maybe it was episode 3, where I talked about the best exercises for jiu-jitsu athletes. The best exercises really are just exercises that work within those main movement patterns. Some sort of squat, some sort of lunge, some sort of hip hinge or deadlift style movement, rotation and anti-rotation, pressing movements both vertically and horizontally, and pulling movements vertically and horizontally. So when we look at bodyweight strength, it makes sense that one of our primary forms of assessing bodyweight strength is going to be a vertical pulling motion, which is just a pull-up. Pull-ups are palms forward. Palms backwards or palms facing your face are going to be chin-ups. For myself and the athletes that I coach, at a minimum, I believe that any competitive grappling athlete, even if you're not a competitive grappling athlete, this is still a good goal to shoot for. But at a minimum, if you're going to compete in jiu-jitsu, regardless of weight class, if you're a man, you compete in jiu-jitsu, you need to be able to do 10 pull-ups. If you can't do 10 pull-ups, that's a problem. That is a weakness that is going to hold you back from being able to feel and perform your best. And we'll talk about in just a little bit on how you can improve your pull-ups. But at a minimum, you got to be able to do 10 pull-ups. And I'm talking strict pull-ups, like no swinging, no kipping pull-ups, full extension, elbows locked at the bottom, chin all the way over the bar at the top. 10 reps at a minimum. Now, just because you can reach that minimum doesn't mean you should stop there. You should continue to increase your strength in that movement. And I think a good base for grapplers would be to aim for 15 pull-ups. If you can do 15 pull-ups, that's honestly really, really solid. Regardless if you're a rooster weight, regardless if you're an ultra heavyweight, if you can do 15 pull-ups, that's awesome. At an elite level, so like building elite level strength in this movement, would be 20 pull-ups or more. So at a minimum, you should be able to do 10 pull-ups. I don't care if you're a 235-pound ultra heavyweight or you're a 115-pound rooster weight, you should be able to do 10 pull-ups. If you can't, you got to fix that. A good base standard to shoot for would be 15 pull-ups. If you can do 20 pull-ups, that is fantastic. I would consider that to be elite level strength in that movement. And once you hit 20 pull-ups or more, I really don't see much benefit in training to go much farther beyond that. So going from the work that it's going to take to go from 20 pull-ups to 25 pull-ups in one set, that time could be used differently for some better outcomes, in my opinion. So at a minimum for pull-ups, 10 reps. Base standard for pull-ups, 15 reps. Elite standard, 20 reps or more. If you could do more than 20 reps on pull-ups, I'd say you're cleared to start adding weight and doing some weighted pull-ups. For myself and the athletes I coach, it's my personal rule that I don't have any athletes do weighted pull-ups until they can do 20 strict bodyweight pull-ups. Main reason being is because I don't think the athletes are going to get any additional value by adding weight unless they can do 20 plus pull-ups. Like if someone can only do 10 pull-ups, I don't think they're going to get much value out of doing weighted pull-ups for 1 to 2 reps. If someone can do 15 pull-ups, they're kind of flirting on that edge there. I'd much rather them just continue to put in the work to build up their capacity to do 20 pull-ups. Once you can do 20 pull-ups, you're not going to get much additional strength benefits by working from going to 20 to 25 reps on pull-ups, so you might as well just add a little bit of additional weight. That's my own personal take. It's worked for all the athletes that I've coached. I know not every coach agrees with that rule, so to speak, but this has worked well for myself and all the athletes that I coach. The next exercise that we're going to use to test bodyweight strength is going to be a pressing exercise, and that's going to be the bodyweight dip. For the bodyweight dip, the standards for these are you're going to start elbows fully locked out at the top. When you come down, all that needs to happen is your shoulder just has to get below your elbow. If you can get lower and get like a really big stretch in your pecs and work through a giant range of motion, that's fantastic. Not everyone can do that right away. At a minimum, regardless of what weight class you are, if you're a guy and you compete in jiu-jitsu, you need to be able to do 10 full range of motion dips. If you can't do that, that's a problem. Same thing with pull-ups. We said like, hey, 10 reps on pull-ups is the minimum, but ideally you should be working that up a little bit higher. So same thing for dips. 10 reps on dips is the minimum, but a good base standard for dips is going to be 20 strict bodyweight dips. The elite standard for bodyweight dips is going to be 30 reps. If you can do more than 30 reps on dips, that is fantastic. That's a ton of dips, and I don't think you're going to get much benefit by taking that number much farther beyond that. And same thing with pull-ups. If you can do more than 30 dips in an unbroken set, like you've hit the elite standard on dips with just your body weight, I'd say you're in a good spot to start adding some weight to that exercise. Now, those kind of cover the main ways I like to test body weight strength for the upper body. If you are someone that really struggles with pull-ups or really struggles with dips, you can kind of scale that back a little bit. So you try to do a pull-up and you can get one pull-up. It's like, okay, that's great. That's all you got, just one pull-up. You could kind of scale it by doing different forms of vertical pulling exercises that are a little bit easier than just a strict bodyweight pull-up. So you can do things like chin-ups, you can do assisted pull-ups, you can do like partial range of motion pull-ups, or even just isometric holds for chin-ups and pull-ups on the bar. Same thing for dips. If you really struggle with dips and you can't do more than 3 dips without falling off, you might want to test your push-ups first. Then once you can get more than 30 push-ups in a single set, then go ahead and transition to something like dips. We'll go over in a little bit some different programming that you can use to improve your strength in those two movements, but I want to tackle the last bodyweight strength test that I use. That's going to be the Nordic Curl. The Nordic Curl is pretty much like a pull-up for your lower body. It is awesome. It's a great test of hamstring strength, and I will say that, there's no way of proving this in some fancy scientific study, but right before I injured my knee, I hit a lifetime PR on Nordic curls. I think I got 11. No, did I get 11 Nordic curls? I think I did. I don't think I got 12, but I think I got 11 Nordic curls. And my hamstrings were super, super, super strong. And there is a bit of a correlation with increasing hamstring strength. It does tend to have a bit of a correlation with decreasing risk of knee injury, or at the very least, decreasing the severity of knee injury. And I think that even though my knee injury happened because I injured myself, I put someone in a calf slicer, wasn't finishing it the proper way, put a ton of strain on my LCL, and then that thing ended up just blown apart. So it wasn't like, if I could do 15 Nordic curls, the injury wasn't going to happen. I don't think that's necessarily true. I really did just injure myself. But I will say, I do think a big part of why I was able to come back to jiu-jitsu so quickly was because my hamstrings were so strong. I think another thing that helped in building up that hamstring strength with the Nordic curl was just building up strong enough hamstrings so that way I was actually able to move around a little bit better than if I injured my knee and didn't have that hamstring strength. I'll have to do a full episode on the full entire history of that injury and how I rehabbed it. But all that to say, the Nordic curl is a great test of lower body hamstring strength. And at a minimum, and this is a pretty tough minimum, not everyone can do a Nordic curl right out the jump. I know I definitely couldn't. I had to train specifically for it and build up my hamstring strength. But I believe that at a minimum, every grappling athlete, whether you're a rooster weight all the way up to ultra heavyweight, every male grappling athlete should be able to do at least one unassisted, full range of motion Nordic curl at a minimum. The base standard for that would be 3 Nordic curls. If you can work your way up to 3 Nordic curls, man, that's freaking dope. You're getting crazy, crazy strong, and that's awesome. An elite standard for Nordic curls, in my opinion, would be 6 reps or more. If you can do more than 6 Nordic curls, you can keep pushing that and try to increase up to like 9, 10, 11 reps on the Nordic curl. However, I don't think that's going to add much additional benefit to your overall grappling strength. And that's something that I saw in myself. It took me a little while to get my first Nordic curl. And then pretty quickly I was able to get to 3 Nordic curls, 5 reps, 6 reps, and I just kept pushing it. And I didn't really notice any more improvements in my physicality in jiu-jitsu going from 6 Nordic curls up to 11 Nordic curls. It was really cool to be able to, bust down on 11 reps, but that was pretty much it. So those are the standards for the bodyweight exercises. Just to review these one last time, our 3 bodyweight strength testers are going to be pull-ups, dips, and Nordic curls. For pull-ups and dips, the minimum standard is going to be 10 reps. The base standard for pull-ups is 15 reps, and the elite standard for pull-ups is 20 reps. For dips, the base standard is going to be 20 reps. The elite standard is going to be 30 reps. Now for the Nordic curls, minimum standard, just 1 rep. If you can do 1 rep, that's solid. However, it is a good idea to work up to that base standard of 3 reps. An elite standard for the Nordic curl is going to be 6 reps or more. Now, we are also going to talk about different barbell strength standards. However, it's important to keep in mind that you don't need to test these right away, specifically the barbell lifts. Anytime I work with a brand new athlete that I'm coaching one-on-one, I take them through a strength assessment and I have them do those bodyweight exercises first. So I test their pull-ups, I test their dips, and then I also test some hamstring stuff to see okay, are we even in the ballpark of testing a full range of motion Nordic curl? Most of the time when I start working with someone, they can't do a Nordic curl. So we usually don't test specifically the Nordic curl right away, but we might test some other posterior chain exercises like deadlifts or maybe even glute ham raises. But that is going to be it for bodyweight strength that I do pretty much right when I start working with a new athlete. These barbell strength standards, I don't test right away because there is a bit of some skill that goes into performing these tests well. If you're going to test someone's 1 rep max squat and you're putting a bar on their back, they may be limited in how much they can squat simply because there is a skill component. As they improve in the skill of squatting, they're going to be able to squat a lot more. So typically what I will do is if an athlete is crushing it and actually able to throw up some awesome weight on different exercises that are more like lunges, Bulgarian split squats, dumbbell bench press, chest supported dumbbell rows, bent over rows, if they're crushing it in those kinds of exercises, then I'll think okay, they're probably good enough to test some of these barbell strength lifts. So let's go over what some of those are. So the first barbell strength standard or assessment would be a full range of motion squat. I'm talking full range of motion, ass to grass style squat. Now, full range of motion, if you squat down just body weight and you can't get ass to grass, in my opinion, you really don't have much business testing your 1 rep max full range of motion squat. You should work on improving your mobility in that movement before you test how much load you can support in that movement. But assuming you can squat ass to grass and maintain proper form and technique, the minimum standard for a full range of motion squat is just 1 times body weight. You should be able, as a grappling athlete, to squat your body weight in any form of squat that you prefer. So some athletes prefer front squats, some athletes prefer back squats. Some athletes, I have them test this on a belt squat where the weight kind of hangs underneath you on a belt. I'll even have people test this with specialty bars, so like a safety squat bar or a cambered bar. It really is about finding the best tool or the best way to test this with each individual athlete. Everyone's built differently. Some people have short torsos with long legs. Some people got short legs with longer torsos. So you really want to make sure that however you're going to be testing your full range of motion squat, you find something that works best for you. I used to make everyone do Zercher squats to test this, and the Zercher squat does work well. You can test this with a Zercher squat, but I also found it just works better for some people to test this with a belt squat. It just works better for some people to test this with something like a heel elevated high bar back squat. Whatever type of squat you're testing this with, just find what works best for you. And at a minimum, the minimum standard, regardless of what weight class you're in, As a man, you need to be able to squat 1 times your body weight. The base standard for a full range of motion squat as a grappler, I would say, is 1.5 times body weight. If you can squat 1.5 times body weight, that's a great base of strength to have in that movement. An elite standard would be 2 times body weight or greater. It is awesome to drive your squat up and squat a ton of weight. However, the work it takes to go from a 2 times body weight squat to a 2.5 times body weight squat, I don't think is the best use of most grapplers' time. You're really not going to encounter many scenarios where you would need to put a bar on your back with 2.5 times body weight, squat ass to grass, and stand up. If you can hit 2 times body weight with one specific style of squat, say like a low bar back squat that still works through a pretty good range of motion, that's awesome. Maybe just swap out the squatting exercise and work towards bringing up another squatting variation to help you be a little bit more of a well-rounded athlete. So if you can low bar squat 2 times body weight, but you can only high bar squat or front squat 1.5 times body weight, it'd be a better idea to focus on bringing up that lagging squat variation. That covers the squat movement pattern. Next is going to be the hip hinge or deadlift movement pattern. You can really pick any style of deadlift you want. We have conventional deadlift, trap bar deadlift, sumo deadlift. You could do a split stance deadlift if you wanted to. You could do different things like a Zercher deadlift, a Jefferson deadlift. Really any sort of deadlift you want works for me. And at a minimum, same thing, you should be able to deadlift about 1.5 times your body weight. A good base standard to shoot for would be 2 times body weight, and then the elite standard for deadlift would be 2.5 times body weight. If you can pick up 2.5 times your body weight in any style, whether that's on a bar, a sandbag, a stone, a couple kettlebells, I mean, you're pretty ridiculously strong, and that's great. That's a great base of grappling strength. The next exercise is going to be a horizontal press. Now, horizontal press can be done with a lot of different variations. I prefer to test this type of strength through a full range of motion. So either with a bar coming all the way down on the chest, pressing all the way up. However, with some athletes, I might pick horizontal pressing exercises that don't work through a full range of motion because currently a limiting factor is their shoulder pain. And I tend to see that a lot with grapplers where, they may say like, hey, I can floor press all day, but when I start to go heavy on full range of motion bench press, I really start to get some shoulder pain, really start to get some elbow pain. So when we assess their strength, I might start them with a floor press and say, hey, this is your horizontal pressing movement. This is our tester, and we're going to see where you're at. Over time, as we start to improve your mobility, improve in decreasing some of that pain that you get when working through a full range of motion, we'll retest your horizontal pressing strength with another exercise that does take you through a full range of motion. For the horizontal press, the minimum strength standard is going to be 1 times body weight. You should be able to press your body weight in your hands, especially in weight class sports like Jiu Jitsu, like wrestling, like MMA. A good base standard would be 1.25 or 1.25 times your body weight. And then the elite standard would be 1.5 times body weight. If you can press much higher than 1.5 times body weight, I think that's badass. I think that's cool. However, the work it's going to take to continue to surpass your strength in that area, going past 1.5 times body weight, probably isn't the best use of your time as a grappler. And then it's kind of same thing that I mentioned on the squat. This applies for deadlift, it applies for horizontal pressing as well. If you reach the elite standard in one variation of any of these lifts, that's fantastic. Then circle back with another variation of those lifts that you haven't reached the elite standard and start building that up. So, for example, like for myself, I've done 1.5 times body weight floor press. I've done 1.5 times body weight bench press. I don't think I've done 1.5 times body weight Larson press, which a Larson press is basically a full range of motion bench press, but your legs are straight out in front of you. So you don't have leg drive. You don't have the same stability that you have when doing a regular bench press. So for me, a good assessment would be, okay, hey, I can floor press 1.5 times body weight. I can bench press 1.5 times body weight. Next thing to do would be can I do it without screwing my feet into the ground? That would be the next natural step for me, just to give an example. Now that I say that, I'm trying to think. My 1.5 times body weight bench press now, I don't think I could do because I'm definitely a lot bigger, but I think I could do it when I was a little bit lighter. Like when I was 160, 165, what would 1.5 times, like 160 plus 80? That's 240. Pretty sure that's 240 if my math is correct, which don't, hold me to that because my math can be kind of squirrely sometimes. But yeah, I think I've done that on bench press. I definitely need to get my Larson press up though. Anyways, last and final barbell style lift that I test my athletes with is going to be a vertical press. There's a bunch of different variations of vertical press that you can use. You got standard, barbell overhead press. You can do a seated military press. You can do a Viking press. You can do a Z press. I'm a big fan of the Z press. The minimum standard for a vertical overhead press for a grappling athlete is 50% of your body weight. Once that's a minimum. After that, it's a good idea to work towards the base standard, which is going to be 75% of your body weight. An elite standard would be 100% of your body weight. I weigh 175 pounds. I definitely can't overhead press 175 pounds right now. But before I did this bulk, I think when I was 165, I'm pretty sure I did 165 for an overhead press. Well, I did it on the Viking press machine. If I can do 165 on the Viking press machine, I'm pretty sure I could probably, now that I'm bigger and a little bit stronger, I'm pretty sure I could probably maintain that and press my body weight at 175. I don't know. I won't say I can or can't until I actually try it, but your boy's feeling pretty big and he's feeling pretty strong, so we'll leave it at that. So all that being said, just to review, we have those 3 body weight strength standards, which we went over. Next are the 4 barbell lift standards, if you want to call them that. You don't have to use barbells. You could use kettlebells. You could use a belt squat. You could use a landmine for some of these variations. But full range of motion squat, at a minimum, you got to be able to squat your body weight. A good base standard is going to be able to squat 1.5 times your body weight. Elite standard, 2 times body weight. Now for the deadlift. At a minimum, you should be able to pull 1.5 times body weight. A good base standard would be 2 times body weight. The elite standard for deadlift or hip hinge style movements would be 2.5 times body weight. Now for horizontal pressing, depending on what variation you're doing, minimum 1 times body weight. A good base standard for any sort of horizontal press is going to be 1.25 times body weight. The elite standard for horizontal pressing is 1.5 times body weight. Now for the vertical pressing, it's a little bit different. At a minimum, 50% of your body weight. Base standard for vertical press, 0.75 or 75% of your body weight. And the elite standard would be 100% of your body weight. Now, when it comes to identifying weakest links, and when you're thinking about, okay, these are the standards, how do I go about assessing my strength in these areas? How can I find the weak links? And then once I find those weak links, how do I build on those things going forward? I typically start everyone off, or at least all the athletes that I work with, I start them off with the body weight strength tests first. Like we do that within the first 2 weeks of working together. We go through an AMRAP test, or as many reps as possible test of strict bodyweight pull-ups and strict dips. If I get the sense that they're strong enough to at least try a Nordic curl, I'll have them do that. But sometimes you can just tell, like, yeah, I can just take one look at this guy. He doesn't seem very strong. His legs are kind of small. He doesn't have a big background in calisthenics strength. Like he's not coming into working with me saying like, hey, I actually come from a CrossFit background, or I come from a wrestling background, where in the wrestling room we were doing tons of partner lunges and partner squats and all this stuff. In their intake, if I get the sense that, yeah, they definitely don't even have anywhere close to the bodyweight strength to even try a Nordic curl, I won't test their AMRAP of Nordic curls right away. I might have them do some other exercises first to kind of see where they're at with their lower body strength. And that really is all individual dependent. Like, for example, there was one guy that I'm working with. I did have him in one scenario. I might have a guy where it's like, oh, well, he can't really do a Nordic curl per se, but he could probably do some glute ham raises, which are a little bit easier than strict Nordic curls. So let's test his glute ham raise and see where he's at. Then there's some other people that are like, yeah, this guy has a pretty serious knee injury. He's kind of coming off the couch. He doesn't have a whole lot of strength experience. We're not even going to bother testing glute ham raise. We're not even going to bother testing the Nordic curl just yet. We're just going to really focus on building up that hamstring strength and capacity first. Then maybe 6 months from now, we'll throw that test in there just to see where he's at. And that's something important to keep in mind, that these things are just tests. That's all they are. They're not predictors of performance. They're not guarantees for performance. There are strong correlations, and we do know that as you get stronger, you perform better as an athlete. But don't miss the forest from the trees and say, oh, I got my squat up to 2 times bodyweight squat. I'm going to go win this grappling tournament. It's like, well, I mean, you're carrying a lot of strength and a lot of potential to produce force going into that tournament, but that's not going to cover up your skill deficit. That's not going to cover up holes in your game plan where you implement the wrong tactics in your competition. Whether you're a competitor or not, there are really 3 things that come down to maximizing your performance as a combat sports athlete. First one is going to be skill. Second is going to be tactics. Third is going to be athleticism. I call this like the trifecta, if you will. Skills is basically your knowledge and your ability to implement that knowledge of your sport or of your combat art, whatever it may be. So if you have a high skill of jiu-jitsu, that means you have a lot of knowledge of jiu-jitsu. You know a lot of different things about how the body moves and how to break certain limbs, how to strangle the neck, and all these different things. You have a lot of skill and experience and knowledge in that area. Tactics, on the other hand, are going to be how you apply your skill set within the confines of the competition or whatever you're doing. So, for example, if you have a very high skill in takedowns, part of your tactics would be, hey, I'm going to try to take this guy down early so that way I can score my 2 points. You're taking your skills, which is your takedown ability, you're bringing that and using good tactics and formulating a game plan around how you can leverage the strength of your skills and kind of hide your weaknesses. That would be tactics. And then third would be athleticism. Third is your physical capacity to apply your skills against resisting opponents and stick with your overall tactics. You may have really good takedowns, but if your athleticism is weak and your conditioning sucks, well, your game plan isn't going to work very well, because you're going to try taking them down for a little bit, then you're going to get tired, then you're going to think like, oh man, there's nothing else I can do except sit on my butt and pull guard. And that's never fun. Actually, pulling guard is fun. I don't know why I said that. Anyways, all that being said, let's circle back to the main point I was trying to make about identifying weaknesses. I usually start with those body weight tests first, specifically pull-ups and dips. And this is something that you can pretty much do this week in the gym. Go through a really good warm-up your upper back, warm up your chest, your shoulders, triceps, biceps, all that stuff, and then just see how many reps you can do. And if, give yourself a score on how many perfect, clean, strict bodyweight pull-ups you've done, rest 5 to 10 minutes, and then run the same thing again on dips and see where you stack up with those standards. Now, if you find a weakness in pull-ups or dips, here are some things that you can do to help improve in that area. What I like to do with athletes is test their AMRAP and then build in specific kind of ramp-up protocols to build strength and just overall work capacity in those movements. I think one of the best ways to improve your body weight strength is just to spend a lot more time moving your body weight. So if you struggle with pull-ups, one of the best ways to get stronger at pull-ups is to do more pull-ups. If you struggle at dips, one of the best ways to improve your dips is to do a lot more dips. That doesn't mean you need to constantly max out your pull-ups and max out your dips but you should just get in a lot more completed reps. So, for example, you test your AMRAP, say you get 10 pull-ups, like you barely skirt by on pull-ups, you barely skirt by on dips. You reach the minimum, but you realize like, man, I really gotta improve in my pull-ups and my dips. What I would do is in week 1, I would aim for completing 300% or 3 times whatever your AMRAP score was. Try to complete that many reps in a workout. So if you got 10 reps on pull-ups, your goal for that next workout is to complete 30 reps. Now, how you break those reps up, I suggest starting pretty conservative and breaking them up into sets of 30% of whatever your AMRAP was. So you test your AMRAP, you get 10 reps on pull-ups. In week 1, you're going to aim for 30 reps of pull-ups in total. That's 3 times your AMRAP. And you're going to do that by breaking them up into sets of 30% or around 30%. So if you need to get 30 pull-ups, you're going to do sets of 3, maybe even 4 reps on a couple sets if you're feeling good. But that's it. You're not going to try to max out every time and do 10 reps and then try to recover and then do another 10 reps, because you're getting so close to failure and reaching failure that it's going to take away from how much volume you can accumulate in that workout. So in week 1, you would do this once or twice a week where you do 30 reps of pull-ups and 1 or 2 of those workouts in sets of 3 to 4 reps. In week 2, you would still aim for 30 pull-ups across that workout, but you would increase the number of reps per set that you're doing. So instead of breaking those 30 reps into sets of 3, you would increase that to sets of 4. And maybe if you're feeling really, really good, you can do a set of 5 in there. Then in week 3, again, we're still doing 30 reps of pull-ups. That hasn't changed. But you're going to increase to doing it in sets of 50% of your AMRAP. So your AMRAP is 10 reps. We're doing 3 times that much in a full workout, which is going to be 30 reps. And we're going to do it in sets of 5. 5 reps would be 50% of your AMRAP of 10 reps. And you're going to break those 30 reps up into sets of 5. Once you do that, you kind of have a choice in week 4. In week 4, if you're feeling really, really good and you feel completely recovered, you can go ahead and test your AMRAP again. If not, it's really not a big deal. You're not going to be losing any of your gains. You can take a little bit of a deload week just from pull-ups. You don't have to take like the full week off of training or anything. And then go ahead and test your pull-ups again in week 5. I've used this progression so many times for so many athletes. And just about every time when an athlete actually sticks to that progression, I'm sure there's probably one instance where an athlete didn't PR their pull-ups, but I can't think of them. So I'll go as far to say I feel safe saying 99% of the time, the athletes that have followed that pull-up progression that I just laid out, almost every time they PR their pull-ups. So again, and this works for dips too. You get your AMRAP, whatever that AMRAP is, you're going to do 3 times as many reps in once or twice a week. If you're doing it twice a week, you just got to make sure that you're taking the necessary steps to recover. But say you got 10 reps on pull-ups or 10 reps on dips, you're going to do 30 reps over the course of a full workout, and you're going to break that up into sets of 30% of your AMRAP. That's in week 1. In week 2, you do the same number of total reps, but you increase how many reps you're doing per individual set to 40% of your AMRAP. In week 3, again, we're still doing 30 total reps. That has not changed, but we're increasing the number of reps that you're doing per set to 50% of your AMRAP. Week 4, you can take a little bit of a deload, and then in week 5, go ahead and test again, smash that PR. And if you smash that PR, you can keep going and keep running that progression all the way up until you reach the elite standard of 20 strict bodyweight pull-ups or 30 strict bodyweight dips. Now, when it comes to the Nordic Curl, I use a little bit of a different approach, because for the Nordic Curl, just getting 1 rep is really, really, really tough. And so if you can't complete 1 rep of the Nordic Curl, you can't do 3 times as many reps of nothing. It's kind of like in The Sandlot when when he says, "You want some more?" And he's like, "Some more of what?" He's like, "No, do you want a s'more?" And then Scotty Smalls says, "I haven't had anything. How can I have some more of nothing?" And then he's like, "You're killing me, Smalls." And then, you guys have all seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, go watch it. It's an American classic. Summer's coming, so you got to get your baseball movies on lock. All that being said, if you can't even complete one Nordic curl, that progression that I just laid out for pull-ups and dips isn't going to work. So we have to use some different strategies. And that's where using a lot more assisted reps and some partial range of motion reps can really help you work towards getting your very first Nordic curl. So for example, say you test your Nordic curl and you can't even get one. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is you got to build up strength and work capacity in your hamstrings to be able to get to that first Nordic curl. And what I would suggest doing is week 1, aim for 10 to 15 total reps of assisted Nordic curls. There's a couple different ways you can do assisted Nordic curls. One of my favorite ways is just to use a band. You kind of have a band that you can either, if you have 2 bands, you can kind of put both bands on like a backpack strap. That's what I like to do. And you have your feet locked in for the Nordic curl, and you lower yourself down with control, and then really feel yourself pulling back with your hamstrings, engaging your hamstrings as much as possible as you lift yourself up. You don't want to have so much assistance from the band that you come down and the band just launches you backwards. Like you want to be working the whole time, but you're going to aim for 10 to 15 total reps. And you can break those reps up into however many sets feel good for you. So when I was working through this progression, I think I did them in sets of 3 to 5. I might have done 5 reps on the first set and then had to do sets of 3 on all the other sets. But again, you're aiming for 10 to 15 reps of assisted Nordic curls in week 1. You can do this once or even twice a week. Again, if you're going to do this twice a week, that's a lot of volume, so just make sure that you're taking the necessary steps to recover well. In week 2, we're going to increase the total number of reps that we're doing in a given workout. So in week 1, we're doing 10 to 15 reps of assisted Nordic curls. In week 2, we're doing 15 to 20 reps of assisted Nordic curls. Same thing. You want to make sure every rep is slow and controlled, really feeling that mind-muscle connection of pulling hard with your hamstrings. In week 3, you're going to aim for 20 reps of assisted Nordic curls. If that's feeling really good in week 4, I would suggest taking that week off and then testing your Nordic curl again in week 5. Some people are at a point where just by doing that progression, like they were really, really, really close to getting their first Nordic curl already. So just by doing that progression, that kind of helped them get over the hump of getting their very first Nordic curl. But even after doing that progression, you still may need some more strength in your hamstrings to get that first Nordic curl. So if you test again in week 5 and you don't get it, that's totally okay. You are stronger. We just need to change up how we're training to continue driving those strength gains. So we did a ton of full range of motion reps that were assisted with the band. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take away the band. We're going to do unassisted reps, but we're going to do partial range of motion. So same thing. In week 5, you test your Nordic curl, and I would suggest testing your Nordic curl 3-rep max and gradually increasing the range of motion. So I wouldn't suggest going like, hey, I'm going to test the Nordic curl, full range of motion, just fall forward and try to pull myself back up. What I would do, because we're going to use partial range of motion in this progression, is you're going to test your 3-rep max, and you're going to start with a pretty high or a pretty short range of motion. So you can put like a medicine ball, you can stack up like yoga mats or bumper plates or whatever, something that's going to hit your chest to stop you from going through a full range of motion. Once you hit your 3 reps, you take some of the plates away, you take some of the yoga mats away, you pick a smaller medicine ball, and you increase the range of motion. You keep gradually increasing the range of motion little by little until you fail on that 3-rep max. Whatever that failure point is, you're going to go back to the last completed set of 3 reps for that Nordic curl. You got to remember what that is, whatever that range of motion is. That's going to be your test in week 5. In week 6, you're going to aim for 10 to 15 total reps of that partial range of motion Nordic curl. So say you're, and I mean, you don't have to get this specific of like, oh, I failed exactly at 48 degrees, just a ballpark, right? So say you failed at about, a little less than 45 degrees. So you say, okay, 45 degrees, that still feels pretty good. It's challenging, but it still feels doable. You're going to get your 10 to 15 reps at 45 degrees. And the following week, so in week 7, you're going to do, in week 7, you're going to do your 15 to 20 reps at that same range of motion. We're not changing the range of motion throughout this progression. Once you find that range of motion, you're sticking with it, and we're increasing work capacity and volume at that range of motion. So you do your 15 to 20 reps, and then in week 8, you're going to do 20 total reps at that partial range of motion. Then from there, you're going to take a week off, and then you test again and run the same thing. You're going to test your Nordic curl, and you're going to start pretty high, and this time you can test your 1 rep max for Nordic curl. You're going to keep working yourself all the way down and get to a point where you reach failure again. Hey, real quick, I wanted to pause the podcast and tell you about the Strength Matrix training app and our free training program called Grappler Accelerator. This is a complete training program that covers all of your needs to help you get started on becoming the best grappling athlete that you can be. Everything from a full strength and conditioning training program, a simple and clean diet guide, recovery protocols, a super sleep toolkit, and a bunch of other dope stuff to help you lift heavy and roll hard. There's already over 1,000 grapplers that have downloaded this training program and gotten started on enhancing their grappling athleticism, and you can be the next. To download this training program today, just go to thestrengthmatrix.com/grappler or click the link in the description below. Now, back to the podcast. I know this is a ton of info coming at you guys on how to run these progressions for pull-ups, dips, Nordic curls, and all that stuff. And if you have questions about any of these progressions, please drop them in the comments below on YouTube or on Spotify. Try to get back to everyone that leaves a comment and help you guys out the best I can. I will say that these progressions have worked so many times for the athletes that I coach. Like, I've run these progressions, not just with myself, but with tons of athletes of all different shapes and sizes. And I will say that for the most part, these progressions are going to help you get really, really strong and really help you increase your body weight strength and your strength to body weight ratio. The only times where these progressions don't necessarily work as well is if, and I'll just be blunt, if you're too fat. If your body fat percentage is way too high, it's going to be very, very difficult to improve your pull-up strength. It's going to be very difficult to improve your dip strength and your Nordic curl strength. So if you're at like 25% body fat, I would suggest like your main priority should be getting down to a much healthier body fat percentage, somewhere between 10 to 15% as a male. That way you're in a much better position to be able to build some of this body weight strength. So just wanted to throw that caveat in there. And that kind of covers our body weight strength standards for grappling athletes. Now, when it comes to the barbell lifts, if someone is not at the base standard, so for squat, if you're not at 1.5 times body weight, for deadlift, if you're not at 2 times body weight, for horizontal press, if you're not at 1.25 times body weight, and vertical press, if you're not at 75% of your body weight. The way I typically help athletes get up to those base standards is with just tried and true basic strength training principles, tried and true basic strength training rep ranges, 4 to 6 sets of 4 to 6 reps. So if you struggle with squats and you weigh 165 pounds, yet you can only squat like 205, 1.5 times body weight would be much closer to 240 or 250, but you can only squat 205, well, we're going to be doing a lot of sets and a lot of reps, 4 to 6 sets of 4 to 6 reps. We're going to do that for several weeks. Same thing with deadlift variations, same thing with pressing variations as well. And that's not to say that you can't use the max effort method or you can't use the conjugate method if that's where your strength is at. You would just do those 4 to 6 sets of 4 to 6 reps as your max effort training. I don't think that the max effort method is the best approach for people who haven't built a good base of strength. And that's why I called it those base standards. If you don't have a good base of strength, I just haven't seen that you're going to get as much benefit. If you weigh 165 pounds and you can only squat 165 pounds, I don't think you're going to get much benefit out of trying to like hit your 1 rep max and squat 170 pounds. I've found that it's a little bit better to, again, kind of increase work capacity, increase the volume and your ability just to handle more sets and more reps of those movements at some of those more traditional strength development rep ranges. It's better to build that base and get up to that base standard. Then once you've hit that base standard, I'd say you're cleared to really start leaning into using the max effort method part of the conjugate system. So if you are in that position where you're somewhere on those barbell lifts, you're between minimum and you're between the base standard for your max effort part of your training or the max effort portion of your workout. Instead of doing a box squat working up to a 3-rep max, you would just do, hey, this is the squat that I'm training. Say it's a Zercher squat. Say it's a belt squat. I'm going to do 4 sets of 6 reps in week 1. In week 2, I'm going to do 5 sets of 5 with a weight that's a little bit heavier. In week 3, I'm going to do 6 sets of 4 reps with a weight that's even a little bit more heavier. Then in week 4, you can take a little bit of a deloader. You can rotate in a new exercise, however you want to work that. I got tons of videos on breaking that down on how you would kind of structure those 3-week pendulum waves. But you'd basically run that for anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. Then maybe take a little bit of a week off just to let your body recover. Then you can go ahead and test again. And for some athletes, I found that just depending on their injury history, some of their strengths and weaknesses, there may be exercises or movement patterns where you're using a more traditional max effort method where someone's upper body strength is really, really strong. So it's like, yeah, we're going to do some heavy ass floor press. We're going to work up to some 3-rep maxes, some 1-rep maxes for the upper body because their upper body is just already really strong, but their lower body may be a little bit underdeveloped. So it's going to say, hey, we're not going to, how we were doing 3-rep maxes on floor press. We're not going to quite do that just yet for the squat and deadlift movements. We're going to be doing, a little bit more sets, a little bit more reps, continuing to build up that base of strength. So hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. If you guys need help on knowing where to start with being able to build strength, being able to get strong and enhance your grappling athleticism, you've probably heard about it before, but I want to tell you about the free training program I have called the Grappler Accelerator. I designed this 100% free training program to be the ultimate training program to kickstart your grappling athleticism in just 30 days. So over the course of 30 days, we're going to work on increasing your strength, stimulating muscle growth, and improving your conditioning. Plus, it comes with a bunch of other dope stuff like a simple and clean diet guide, recovery protocols, daily mobility or a morning mobility routine that you can do. Comes with a super sleep toolkit, a bunch of other cool stuff that's going to help you ultimately feel and perform your best. So if you're listening to all this stuff about pull-ups and dips and Nordic curls and strength standards and all that, and you don't know where to start, best place to start would be download Grappler Accelerator and get started on that training program. It's going to point you in the right direction to building up your strength in a way that's going to directly translate to your performance on the mat. And with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the shout outs and comments section of the podcast. This is probably quickly becoming my favorite portion of the podcast because you guys, the Lift Heavy Roll Hard Grappling Club, not only is the club growing, but I would say like the education level of the Lift Heavy Roll Hard Grappling Club is getting pretty high. Like you guys know what you're talking about. You guys are asking some really intelligent questions, and it's been really fun interacting with you guys online. But first question is from at throwaway3248. He says, "Is your BJJ record public, and do you compete?" It is public, I'm pretty sure. I think it's on Smooth Comp or one of the websites like that. And I don't compete anymore, mainly because I just don't have any desire to. I just love training, and that's not to say that I would never compete in the future, but for me, training is what makes jujitsu most fun. And earlier in my life, when I was, in my early 20s, competing was the best part about jujitsu. And now, as I've just gotten older and I'm running a business and I'm doing all these different things, competing doesn't have the same allure and it doesn't have the same excitement as it used to. And so I've just found, like, you know what? Like, what I really love doing is lifting heavy and rolling hard. And if I compete, how I train to perform my best in competition is going to take away from how much fun I have lifting and the way I like to lift. And I don't want to take away from that right now. I'm kind of in this interesting point in my life where I just turned 28, and for the last 15 years, let's see, I don't think 20 years, because I don't think I was 8 years old when I started martial arts. Probably for like the last 12 to 15 years, I've been doing martial arts or some form of combat sport, whether that be martial arts, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. And I'm kind of at this point now, as I'm getting closer to 30, where I just realize, like, man, like, I'm kind of in the peak of my athleticism and the peak of my youth, so to speak. And I don't want to only use it for combat sports. I want to try exploring some other things, trying some new things out. So earlier this year, I tried surfing for the first time, which was freaking sick. Your boy was carving it up like Johnny Utah. I can't say confidently I was carving it up per se, but I did stand up and I did ride a couple waves, and it was awesome. And I've also been getting really into rock climbing lately, or I guess technically the term is bouldering. Hopefully the rock climbing community doesn't get mad at me, but I've been bouldering a ton, and that's been super fun. So anyway, long-winded answer to say, yes, my jiu-jitsu record is public. I don't know what it is. It's probably nothing impressive, but it's probably out there somewhere. And I used to compete, but don't compete anymore. Doing some other stuff right now. Next question from Poodoo666. Yikes. Uh, his comment is that xenomorph dope AF. That's what I'm talking about, dog. Yeah, that I have a 3D printed xenomorph like desk art thing that my wife got me for my birthday last year. Alien is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think the xenomorph is like one of the coolest movie monsters. Actually, I'd say it is the coolest movie monster of all time. Like, there's some great stuff in Lord of the Rings, and that kind of maybe doesn't count because it's technically like fictional writing monster, like the Balrogs and all that stuff. Those guys are dope. But like just straight up movie monster, the xenomorph has to be number one. And I think the xenomorph is freaking sick. There was a time last year where I called one of my training programs. I didn't end up releasing it or anything. It was just like my own spreadsheet. It was called this, but it was called the Xenomorph program, where I was trying to be like the perfect organism, if you know what I'm saying. So anyway, thanks, man. Yeah, the Xenomorph is pretty dope. I'm down with it. All right, next and last comment, so to speak, from at Shakaz or Shakazla AGR. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. He had something to say about PEDs, because he said that someone that I did a video with was on PEDs, and I just responded and said, like, hey, whether or not this guy's on PEDs doesn't really matter, because the information that he's given in this video is beneficial for natural and enhanced athletes. And then he said that PEDs are cheating and not justified in any way. It's dangerous for the opponents that are natural and bad for all the kids that look up to these so-called athletes. It's an industry only for making money, and the kids are the customers. And normally I wouldn't respond to something like this, but I just got to put it out there. Taking PEDs is not cheating if it's not against the rules. I don't know why it's so difficult for people to get that through their head sometimes. If you're going to compete in jiu-jitsu, there is only one competition that has a stance and rules against the use of PEDs, and that's in the IBJJF. I think they do an absolutely terrible job of regulating that, but those are the rules. So If you take PEDs and you compete in the IBJJF, I think you're a scumbag because that's just part of the rules, and that's my stance. Outside of IBJJF competition, if you compete in ADCC, if you compete in Who's Number One or EBI, UFC Fight Pass Invitational, any of these other big shows or local competitions, you can take whatever you want. Like, that's just part of the sport. If it's not against the rules, it's not cheating. And people think it's dangerous and unfair for enhanced athletes to compete against natural athletes, when in my opinion, I think it's the most fair. If everyone's completely honest and open about the fact, like, hey, this is an untested competition, that means that if everyone that signs up to that untested competition all understands that there is a chance that the person you compete against may be enhanced. I don't think the enhanced person needs to disclose that. I don't think that they need to like post about their PED usage. Like, that's totally up to them if they want to disclose that. But untested competition means that you're not testing for anything, which means that there's a chance that you're going to compete against someone who's enhanced. And to me, if there is no PED testing, that is the ultimate way to make it the most fair. Everyone has the same opportunity to take whatever they want. Everyone can choose for themselves what they are willing or not willing to take. And each athlete can take responsibility for their own body and do what they want to do. I don't know why that's so hard to get through people's heads sometimes. If it's not against the rules, it's not cheating. And I can understand how some people may say, like, oh, this is bad for the kids because kids looked up to these athletes. So I can kind of understand, like, yeah, it might be a bad look for the kids, but at the same time, I also think, like, it's not the athlete's job to be a good role model for the kids. I think it's better if they aspire to be a good role model for kids, yet that's not their job. Their job is to compete. Their job is to win. Their job is to break limbs and strangle necks. Their job isn't to be a good role model, even though I think there'd be a net positive if people strive to be a good role model. And I think if kids, to me, I think it's like in bodybuilding, like if a kid looks at Mr. Olympia, and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to look like that someday. Is Mr. Olympia bad because everyone on stage is just gassed to the gills? I don't think so. At some point that kid's going to grow up and realize, oh yeah, there's some other stuff going on. And that's just part of growing up and part of maturing. And I think that I don't think competitions should be run or officiated or regulated specifically for what is good or not good for kids, especially with the conversation of PEDs. If you want to be safe, if you want to be healthy, don't compete. If you want to be a good role model, that's great. Like, you make decisions for your own life based on that. But that doesn't mean that PEDs should be regulated only for the sake of kids, so to speak. And I'm talking adult competitions. Obviously, in kids' competitions, that's a different story. You got these overzealous parents that are putting their kids on all this crazy stuff because they're going to win some $10 plastic medal at a local competition. I think that's ridiculous. But anyway, I'm kind of standing on a soapbox right now, so I'll step down. And all that being said, thank you guys so much for checking out this episode of the Settlage Strength Podcast. If you guys enjoyed this episode, share it with your favorite training partner. I got a couple messages this week which were super encouraging. People were saying, Coach Jay, I got a question about conditioning, blah, 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 blah. And then at the end, they said, like, I've been listening to every episode of the podcast, sharing it with all my training partners. And I was like, man, thank you so much. The best way to grow the Lift Heavy, Roll Hard Grappling Club is to share this podcast with your favorite lifting partner and or share it with your favorite rolling partner. Lift heavy, roll hard. Catch y'all later. Peace.